What if you planned your dream family vacation, only to wake up in a hospital bed and find they left you behind? Meet Jessica, a 30-year-old Denver woman who carried her family's burdens, bills, therapy, and all until a car crash changed everything. A hidden truth about her family's betrayal awaits, one that will break her heart and set her free. Will she forgive or fight back? Hit that like button, subscribe, and stick around for a family drama that'll leave you speechless. You won't believe what happens next. Have you ever felt like you're just a shadow in everyone else's spotlight? I have. At 30, I wasn't chasing dreams or exploring the world. I was balancing my family's bills, barely holding myself together. But waking up in a hospital bed after a devastating accident, the sharpest pain wasn't from my injuries. It was learning my family had jetted off on a vacation tickets I'd paid for without a backward glance. That moment shifted everything. That was the day I chose myself. My name is Jessica, and by 30, I'd become the anchor for everyone else, not by choice, but because I had to. While my Denver friends chased promotions or planned weekend escapes, I was drowning in overdue utility bills and grocery lists that weren't even mine. Every Sunday followed the same script. That weekend, folding laundry, my phone buzzed. "Jessica, honey, Jason's therapy bill came in," Mom said, her voice laced with guilt and familiarity. She didn't need to say more. I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose, and opened my banking app. "How much, Mom?" Our routine was a tired dance. She'd call, I'd pay, and the resentment building in my chest went unspoken, heavy as stone. Jason, my brother, 4 years older, hadn't worked in nearly a year. A rough patch, they called it, but to me, it was a relentless storm. No one asked how I managed, juggling overtime at a digital branding agency while covering their expenses. I'd stopped asking myself, too. People say responsibility builds strength, but when it's thrust upon you, it doesn't feel like power. It feels like sinking quietly, flailing beneath the surface, hoping someone sees you're exhausted from treading water alone. Jason's rough spell was no gentle breeze. It was a wrecking ball. It started last fall when he was overlooked for a regional director role at his Denver company. I can still see him pacing my kitchen, me in my work blazer, as he raged. "They gave it to Kevin! Kevin!" he spat, slamming his phone down like it had betrayed him. "You know how long I've been there, Jessica? How much I've given?" Before I could respond, he said, "I quit. Told them to shove it." I stared, stunned not by his anger, but by how quickly he torched his career with nothing waiting. The ashes were still settling when his next call came. I kept hoping he'd rebound, apply for jobs, find something better. But weeks bled into months, and nearly a year passed. My parents said he was being selective. My bank account said he was draining me dry. Jason had demands: remote work, equity shares, unlimited PTO, a collaborative culture his excuse for dodging interviews. While he scrolled LinkedIn from our childhood home, I buried myself in deadlines and freelance gigs to keep us afloat. The sting wasn't just the money. It was the expectation that I'd carry his failures while everyone tiptoed around his fragile ego. Mine? Mine was supposed to be unbreakable. After a year of extinguishing fires I didn't start, I was running on empty. I couldn't recall the last time I'd done anything for myself. That's when the idea of a trip flickered. Not a quick getaway, something big, something mine. Rome had always been a quiet dream, scribbled in a college notebook next to "Learn to make fresh pasta." That list had long been buried under adult life. But one night, past midnight at my desk, I typed Rome into a search bar, just to feel something beyond exhaustion. Clicks turned into hours of planning. I pictured wandering cobblestone streets with my parents, Mom's eyes sparkling as she tried authentic pecorino for the first time she'd always dreamed of Italy's cheese tastings. For Dad, I found a private wine tour in the Lazio countryside where he could savor a bold red, sipping slowly like he was tasting every moment. I even picked a hotel in Trastevere, nestled among ivy-draped walls and street musicians' warm light. A small terrace, breakfast on the balcony. It felt like a scene from a movie. For weeks, I poured myself into it, every reservation, every little detail. I thought, maybe if I can just give them this, then maybe we'd have one memory untouched by stress or sacrifice, one stretch of time where I didn't have to be the fixer, the wall, the quiet support system. This wasn't just a vacation. It was hope stitched together with spreadsheets and confirmations, a dream I was finally daring to change, even if it meant I had to carry everyone else there to see it come true. The morning before our flight to Rome, I woke up with a sense of anticipation I hadn't felt in years. My suitcase was already packed and zipped by the door. The itinerary I spent weeks crafting was printed, highlighted, and tucked neatly into my purse. All I had left to do was meet a new client downtown for a final presentation, then head straight to the airport from there. I remember adjusting the volume on the car stereo, humming along to an old jazz playlist while navigating the snow-melted streets of Denver. My thoughts drifted, picturing Mom in a sun hat, Dad swirling wine in a vineyard, the three of us laughing over a shared pasta dish on a quiet Roman street. That was the last clear moment. A green light. A glance at the street sign, then impact. A deafening screech of tires, a blur of silver metal, and silence. When I opened my eyes, everything was blurred at the edges. My limbs felt heavy, like someone had packed my bones with sand. Sirens wailed in the distance, voices urgent and echoing. Someone was holding my wrist, checking for a pulse. I tried to speak, but my mouth wouldn't cooperate. The next memory is of a hospital ceiling, then white lights, machines humming softly. My throat burned as I swallowed, and pain radiated down my left side like fire. "You're lucky," the nurse said gently, adjusting my eye. "That car hit you pretty hard. You're going to need time." I didn't feel lucky. I felt hollow. The worst part wasn't the pain or the bruises or the surgical tape itching my ribs. It was the quiet absence of everything I had been clinging to. The trip, the escape, the one piece of joy I had carved out of a hard year. Lying there in that hospital bed, reality settled like dust. Whatever version of the future I had imagined ended at that intersection, and everything after that I would have to rebuild from nothing. I was still groggy from the anesthesia when they walked in. The pain meds dulled the throbbing in my ribs, but nothing could dull what came next. My mom entered first, clutching the same beige crossbody bag she'd bought specifically for the Rome trip. The sight of it made my stomach twist. Dad followed quietly behind her, and Jason trailed after them, sipping from a hospital coffee cup like he had all the time in the world. "I'm so sorry," I rasped, my voice hoarse from the breathing tube. "We'll have to cancel everything. I'll call the hotel as soon as I'm able." I expected maybe a look of concern, or even just a sigh of disappointment. Instead, my mom offered a soft smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Oh, sweetheart, don't worry about any of that," she said, adjusting her purse strap like we were discussing brunch plans. "Your father and I talked it over. We've decided to go ahead with the trip." My breath caught. I blinked. Sure, I'd misheard. "See, what you need to stay here and heal, and since you can't come," she continued, glancing over at Jason, "we take your brother instead. He could really use the break." Jason nodded like it was the most logical thing in the world. "You were supposed to check on the house while we were gone," he said matter-of-factly. "You have to hire someone, just make sure they're reliable." I couldn't speak. My mouth was open, but no words came. They stood there making small talk about passport holders and neck pillows, as if I weren't lying in a hospital bed with fresh stitches and a swollen ivy line. I searched their faces for something, compassion, guilt, even recognition, but found only convenience. Then they turned to go. "Wick send photos," Mom said cheerfully, like she was signing off a postcard. The door clicked shut behind them, and suddenly the room felt impossibly empty. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the beep of the monitor and the distant shuffle of nurses' shoes in the hallway. The betrayal hit deeper than any injury I'd sustained. I hadn't just been left behind. I'd been replaced in the very escape I'd planned, one that was meant to bring us closer. They had carved me out of the picture without hesitation, and all I could do was lie there stunned, wondering how long it had been since I was seen as anything more than a solution to someone else's problem. I stared at the door long after it closed, as if somehow willing it to open again would make them come back and realize how wrong this all was. But they didn't. They had already moved on, literally rolling their suitcases down the hospital corridor on their way to catch a flight I had booked. I turned my head slowly and reached for the nurse call button. When she arrived, I asked in a whisper, "Could you please get my phone? It should be with my things." A few minutes later, she handed me a clear hospital bag. I dug through it with shaking hands, finding my phone at the bottom, thankfully still intact. I flicked on the phone and gazed at the lock screen, a snapshot of us three from last Thanksgiving. All smiles. Without a second thought, I erased it, swapping the memory for a plain sky blue background. Then I opened my email. The Rome trip folder sat there, each subject line a jab. Hotel confirmation, wine tour schedule, Santa Cruz trek booking. My thumb lingered over the first email. If I was just their travel planner, fine, I'd wrap up what I started. A few taps, a curt email, and the 3-night stay at the ivy-draped boutique hotel vanished. Next, I axed Mom's cheese-tasting tour, then Dad's private vineyard driver. The rooftop dinner I'd booked weeks ago canceled in seconds. Months of planning unraveled in minutes. Each deletion brought a strange blend of ache and clarity. The return flights were last. My thumb hovered over the cancel button, picturing them landing in Rome, weary, expecting luxury, only to find no hotel, no itinerary. I pressed it. Done. I set the phone face down on the tray by my bed and shut my eyes. I hadn't expected calm, but there it was not vengeance, not even triumph, just quiet. They'd walked away without a glance, assuming I'd keep everything together. For once, I let it collapse. Deep inside, something stirred. They chose their getaway. I chose myself. At 2:17 a.m., my phone buzzed softly, its screen piercing the dark hospital room. I didn't check it right away. I knew who it was. By breakfast, 7 missed calls. By mid-morning, 14. Each message shifted tone, as if they were testing which version of me might crack sympathetic, guilty, or just worn out enough to give in. I didn't answer. Instead, I snagged a pen from the nurse's station and flipped over the hospital's lunch menu. I sketched 3 columns: calls, texts, voicemails. It started as a half-joke but became a ledger, proof of what they thought I still owed. By noon, I'd counted 32 missed calls and 23 texts. Jason's came first, sharp and biting. "This is low, Jessica. We're stranded because of you, standing in the hotel lobby with our bags and no booking. This is messed up." Mom's followed. "Jessica, we're heartbroken. After all we've done, you abandon us like this? Is this what family means now?" Dad's were sparse but all caps, like he was yelling through the screen. "Fix this! Your mother's crying!" Each message piled on, heavy as bricks, meant to drag me back into the cage I'd escaped. I didn't flinch. I didn't reply. I just kept tallying. By evening rounds, my list spilled past the menu's edges. The nurse glanced at it, then at me. "Your to-do list?" "Something like that," I said, sliding it under the tray. When voicemails hit 19, curiosity won. I played one Jason again, voice taut with anger. "Hope you're proud. We've been wandering all day for a decent place to stay. Mom's drained. Dad's furious. You left us with nothing. Real classy." I deleted it. Not when asked if I was okay, not a single, "How are you holding up?" Just demands, blame, pressure. But it didn't hit like it used to. That list of missed calls wasn't duty. It was evidence. The only time they chased me was when I stopped carrying their weight. On the 3rd day post-surgery, as the room's silence threatened to swallow me, a soft knock came, tentative at the doorframe. "Room for contraband?" a familiar voice murmured. I looked up to see Ashley from the content team, clutching a paper cup with a green sleeve, her smile sheepish. Behind her, David from web design held a pastry box like a truce offering. "You didn't think we'd let you live on mystery meat and applesauce, did you?" They stepped in, their warmth and the scent of real coffee cutting through the sterile air. I hadn't realized how much I needed it, not the coffee, but the reminder that someone saw me as more than a fix-it tool. The next day, Brittany and Kevin from Analytics showed up with gossip magazines and the latest office chaos apparently. Someone's Comic Sans in a client deck nearly sparked a revolt. Then Melissa, my manager, arrived with sunflowers and a quiet promise. "You're not falling behind. We've got you." They came alone or in pairs, never lingering too long, always leaving something: laughter, snacks, a warmth I hadn't named at first. It was care, pure and unforced. They weren't here for what I could do. They were here to say I wasn't forgotten. For the first time in ages, I felt seen, not used. Somewhere between the second croissant and the fourth dry joke about office politics, it sank in. Maybe I hadn't lost it all. Maybe I was finally seeing who'd been in my corner all along. It happened on a Thursday morning, just after my physical therapist left the room. I had taken 5 slow steps from the bed to the window without assistance, and for the first time in weeks, I felt proud. A quiet kind of proud, the kind you hold close like a secret. I was still sore, still stitched, but standing. I didn't hear them coming, just the sudden jarring sound of wheels scraping the linoleum floor, luggage rolling too quickly down the corridor. And then, without a knock, the door burst open. My mother stepped in first, hair a mess, sunglasses perched uselessly on her head. She still wore the same linen pants and jacket I had picked out for her Rome packing list. "How dare you?" she said, her voice trembling. Not from pain, but fury. Behind her came Jason, dragging his suitcase like a prop in a performance, his jaw CL'd so tightly I thought his teeth might crack. Dad stood in the doorway, arms crossed, his silence louder than anything. I didn't move. I was still gripping the metal rail by the window, steadying myself, the irony of that not lost on me. "You abandoned us," Mom continued, storming closer to my bed. "We were stranded, humiliated after everything, Jessica." Jason threw his arms up, motioning around the room. "Look at her. Private room, 3 meals a day, nurses on standby, and we're out there sleeping in a motel that smells like wet carpet." I blinked, stunned, not by their arrival, but by the audacity of their complaint. Nurse Amber stepped between us before I could respond. "I'm going to ask you to lower your voices," she said firmly. "This is a recovery ward, not a debate stage." But they didn't hear her, or didn't care. Jason kept going. "You're not the victim here, Jessica. You ruined a once-in-a-lifetime trip, and for what? So you could make a point." Something inside me cracked. I straightened, letting go of the support rail. My legs wobbled, but I stood tall. "No," I said quietly. "Let's talk about ruining things." The room fell silent. "For the last year, I've paid your bills, covered the rent, bought your groceries. I worked overtime to make sure Mom could keep her therapy appointments. I transferred money every time the lights were about to be shut off." I turned to Jason. "And you sat on the couch applying to jobs that offered free yoga classes and Friday nap hours, pretending you were being selective. You rejected reality while I held everything together." Mom opened her mouth to speak, but I raised a hand. "I planned this trip. I paid for the hotel, the tours, every last detail. It was supposed to be a gift, a thank you. And then I got hit by a car, needed emergency surgery, nearly died. And what did you do?" No one answered. "You left me. You picked up your bags and walked out of this hospital to sip wine in a foreign country with the one person who hasn't lifted a finger in a year." Dad looked away. Jason's face burned, but he didn't say a word. And then Mom did the unthinkable. "We didn't know if you'd still be able to travel," she said flatly. "You might have ended up disabled. That's why we thought it was better to go while everything was still usable." Usable? That was the word that finally killed whatever was left of me. Without breaking eye contact, I reached for the nurse call button and pressed it. "Yes, Jessica?" Amber's voice came through the speaker. "Can you please send security to my room? I need 3 people escorted out and added to my restricted visitors list." My mother's mouth fell open. "You're joking?" But I wasn't. 2 security officers arrived within minutes. One of them stepped in front of me as if I needed protection. I didn't. "This patient is recovering from major trauma," he said firmly. "We're going to have to ask you to leave." As they were let out, Mom shouted something about betrayal. Jason muttered under his breath. Dad said nothing. Their voices faded as they moved down the hall, and for the first time in years, so did their power. I sat back on the bed, shaking from adrenaline, but lighter than I'd felt in a long, long time. Not broken, just finally done. 3 days after security escorted my family out of the hospital room finally felt like mine. No more angry messages, no more guilt trips in digital disguise, just the soft hum of machines, the occasional shuffle of nurses' shoes, and the rare, unfiltered quiet I didn't realize I had been missing for years. I spent those days healing not just my ribs and stitches, but something deeper, something that had been bruised long before the crash without my phone constantly buzzing. The silence wrapped around me like a warm coat. For once, I didn't have to brace for impact, no emotional grenades waiting behind every notification. My medical team said I was making faster progress than expected. The physical therapy was painful. Sure, but I leaned into it. Every inch of progress felt like reclaiming part of myself by the end of the second week. I could walk short distances without help. I could laugh without wincing. I could breathe without the weight of someone else's expectations pressing against my chest. Then came the discharge papers. It was surreal packing up what little I had. A book, a half notepad, a pair of slippers. No family to sign me out. No cheerful ride home. Waiting. But as I stepped out of the elevator and into the Colorado sunlight, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt free when I opened the door to my apartment. I almost cried, not because of what was there, but because of what wasn't. No chaos, no mess, just peace. Someone had been there. The dishes were done, the trash was out, there were fresh to in a vase on the kitchen table. A sticky note on the fridge in Ashley's handwriting read, "Welcome home, Jay. We've got your back." The fridge was stocked. There were even ice cream pints labeled with days of the week. Thursday was Rocky Road. I didn't hear from my parents, not directly at least, but the family, Grapevine, buzzed back to life within a month. Texts from cousins, a voicemail from my aunt, screenshots of Facebook, posts my mother had gone public. She'd written some melodramatic status about raising an ungrateful daughter who turned her back on her family in their time of need. She played it like a soap opera. Sick parents, jobless brother, abandoned vacation dreams. It was all there. Except for the truth. What she didn't expect was the comments. My cousin Elise replied, "First, you left Jessica in a hospital bed to sip wine in Rome with Jason, who hasn't worked in over a year. Let's not pretend you're the victims here." Then came Melissa, then Omar, then Melissa. They told their versions how they'd watched me work 2 jobs, how I'd supported my family without complaint, how they had visited me in the hospital when my own parents didn't. 3 days later, the post was gone. But by then, screenshots had made the rounds, the mask had slipped, and there was no putting it back on. I ignored their messages, the bouquets they sent, the texts dripping with guilt, and the emails that masqueraded as apologies but reeked of control. Instead, I poured myself into healing. My legs grew stronger, the ache in my back faded when I stood too long. I started working part-time from home, then eased back into the office. The day I walked in without my cane, everything felt solid again. My coworkers greeted me with a massive banner stretched across my desk. "Welcome back, boss lady." There was cake, laughter, and a warmth that told me I was missed not for what I did, but for who I was. That night, I sank into my couch, a fork in one hand, leftover cake in the other, and scrolled through travel sites on a whim. I typed Rome, same boutique hotel, same cheese tour, same vineyard day trip. But this time, I booked 1 room, 1 seat, 1 name, mine. The confirmation email landed quietly in my inbox. No fanfare, just a soft reminder that what I'd once surrendered was now mine alone. As the Denver skyline swallowed the sun, I shut my laptop and let the stillness wrap around me. For years, I'd tethered my worth to being reliable, useful, the one who kept everything afloat. Now, I was learning to be whole just for me, not shattered, not resentful, but starting anew. I thought the silence meant my family had finally moved on, but nothing stays buried long with them, not when there's an audience. It began with a call from my cousin Ella. I let it go to voicemail, but her text followed instantly. "Have you seen Aunt Naomi's Facebook post?" I hadn't. I'd muted her notifications long ago. Curiosity tugged me back online, and there it was, 4 paragraphs of theatrics pinned to her page. As parents, we pour everything into our children, yet they turn away. Our hearts are broken. Our family has struggled, and in our time of need, our daughter chose silence over support. We grieve and pray she returns to us. The post had 70 comments, already strangers offering sympathy, clueless about the truth. "So sorry, Naomi. Kids today have no loyalty." Sending strength. "Family is everything." I scrolled, expecting more of the same, until my cousin Elise's comment sparked like a flame in dry grass. You left Jessica alone in a hospital bed after her accident and took Jason to Rome instead. That's not heartbreak, that's abandonment. Then Lucas from Chicago and Dina from Boston chimed in, each voice adding truth. How I'd supported my parents for a year, paid for Jason's therapy, funded the trip they took without me. Naomi stayed silent, but the post disappeared within hours, though not before screenshots spread through the family group chat. I said nothing. I didn't need to. Those who mattered knew, and those who didn't. I no longer felt obligated to enlighten. For the first time, I let the truth stand on its own, no defenses, no explanations. Just quiet. And that quiet carried more weight than all their words combined. 4 months later, I stepped off the plane at Leonardo da Vinci Airport with a carry-on, a crossbody bag, and a heart that felt unburdened. Rome smelled of espresso and promise. The sun rose, painting the cobblestones outside the terminal in soft gold. It felt dreamlike, walking alone into a city I'd once pictured sharing with my parents, now claiming it entirely for myself. A driver held a sign, "Miss Jessica Walsh." I grinned as I approached. No one had ever called me Miss outside a bill or legal notice, but here it sounded like liberty. My hotel was just as I'd imagined, small, nestled between two shuttered art galleries in Trastevere. Ivy climbing its walls, a terrace overlooking the narrow street below. The room was bright, the linens fresh, the balcony table set for one. I spent my days as I pleased. I took the cheese tour my mom once craved, savoring each bite without feigning her tastes. I wandered the vineyard my dad never saw, sipping bold reds in silence, no need to voice my thoughts. I roamed alleyways alone, got lost on purpose, took no photos, tagged no locations. This was mine. On the third night, I sat at a small outdoor cafe, a bowl of carbonara before me, a glass of Montepulciano in hand. I watched people pass laughing, strolling, alive. I opened my phone, deleted the last family photo in my gallery, then snapped a new one. My view, the untouched pasta, the soft lights strung above. A beginning. Later, I checked my calendar on my laptop, not ready to leave. I booked 2 more days, no plans, just space. Peace, I learned, doesn't always arrive with a flourish. Sometimes it slips in through small choices. Booking a single seat, finishing a meal alone, walking a foreign city, and feeling not lonely, but complete. For the first time, I wasn't running from anything. I was simply living, and that was enough. This story cuts deep because it's not just about a trip or a betrayal, it's about what happens when you realize the people you've carried don't see your worth. Jessica's experience resonates with anyone who's ever felt like their role in a family is to fix, to fund, to hold everything together while their own needs fade into the background. What strikes me most is her strength in reclaiming her life. She didn't just cancel the trip out of spite. She dismantled the expectation that she'd always be the one to sacrifice. That moment in the hospital, deleting those reservations, wasn't just about Rome. It was about choosing herself after years of being invisible. It's a reminder that sometimes the hardest boundaries are the ones we set with those closest to us. The lesson here is simple but heavy. Your worth isn't tied to what you do for others. Jessica learned that love and duty shouldn't mean erasing yourself. By walking away from her family's demands and stepping into Rome alone, she showed that healing starts when you prioritize your own peace. It's not selfish, it's survival. If this story hit home, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life dramas that make you think. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Next week, we'll dive into another story of family secrets and tough choices. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Now, let's talk. Have you ever had to set a hard boundary with family? What would you have done in Jessica's shoes? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and I want to hear your story.